Welcome back to Part T with Becky and Kenzie. Today's topic is embracing your darkness. Okay, so welcome to Part 3 of Embracing Your Darkness. We've gone through a couple different themes of what your darkness is, how to embrace it, and how to work on your shadow self. And within your shadow self, we work on your subconscious, and that starts from very early on in childhood. So, part 3 is going to be all about questions to ask yourself about childhood, how to observe your shadow self, and how to set yourself up for success for healing your shadow and bringing light to it. So, to start, the questions that you can ask about your childhood to start journaling about are, how did I feel most of the time? I know I talked about before in part 2 how I was very fearful all of the time. Not because of things my parents said, but because of my subconscious holding on to my birth. So, how did you feel most of the time? And sort of dive into why you might have felt that way. What was expected of me? What behaviors and emotions of mine were judged? And how did those judgments create the parts of your shadow self? So, whether it's things that your parents said to you, teachers, other kids, things that you've just heard growing up from family members, how did those things shape how you behaved in your adult life? Um, and then Becky's going to go into how to become aware of your shadow self from childhood.
So, to become aware of your shadow, you have to choose to see it. You can shine a light on it and bring it out of the darkness. Don't shame or blame the shadow once you're aware of it. Treat it with love, compassion, and acceptance. So, also love, compassion, and acceptance. Treat yourself that way as well. Just like this saying, I hear this saying a lot. Once you reach a certain age, you're stuck in your ways, or, oh, well, they're stuck in their ways, because they're older or however old they are. I don't believe that to be true. I believe that if you're behaving a certain way, or if you're doing things a certain way or acting a certain way, it's a choice. You're choosing to stay stuck in the past instead of being present in the moment.
And
So,
also, not choosing to change
yes,
is a choice. Like, that's a
yes.
choice as well.
Yeah, a lot of, especially with parenting, a lot of the old school way or the old school mentality, the outdated parenting ways of doing things. You're choosing to not educate yourself. You're choosing to stay there when we've learned so much. Like, even like when we were younger, I always joke where I'm like, everything was wrong when we were younger. Like, now is the right way to like parent. But
Yeah.
it's because we've learned, like, hey, this is not so safe to do, or hey, that's not the greatest thing to give your child to play with, or this type of food is not the greatest for them to eat because of its lack of nutritional value.
Right.
So they're all choices. Next, we're going to go into observing without judgment. I know we talked about observing in the beginning. So the first way to do this is to tell your harsh inner critic to take a seat. Judging and rejecting your shadow makes it grow bigger and stronger. When you see your shadow, acknowledge and observe it without judgment to understand it, and then you can work on integrating it. So how we talked about triggers and emotional responses, observing that. When you're observing, you're stepping out and looking in. Shadow work is the highest form of light work that you can do for yourself. And making peace with your shadow makes peace within yourself. I started doing this work so that I could heal generational traumas. I didn't eventually, when I wanted to have children and when Violet was born, or before she was born and before I even was ready to have children, I wanted to start that healing process because I didn't want to pass on any generational trauma to her or limit it, I guess. And embracing our darkness is a great way to experience inner healing and transformation. The only tool that you need to start is self-awareness. So observing, self-awareness, all these, take these steps one step at a time. We've gone through a lot of information in this 3-part series, but if you can only pull one thing out, definitely tell us what's your one thing that your one takeaway from this, or the one piece that you want to start with. The more you become aware of your shadow self and embrace your darkness, the more conscious you become. I know. So how Kenzie's saying how she's very self-aware, that comes with practicing shadow work, doing the work. The more aware you become, the more you can release repressed emotions and feelings to live a happier and fulfilled life, to live fully present in the moment, to not think so much or be reliving your past or any past stuff that's not a good memory for you. Your shadow is hiding your potential, your gifts, and your talents that you haven't become consciously aware of yet.
I also wanted to go back to what you said about observing the self too, the shadow self, because I did do a Kenzie Menz on this after reading a book. It was called The Untethered Soul, and it kind of posed the question of like, who is the true self? And it was asking, is the true self this inner critic that you were talking about, or is the true self the one that observes that inner critic? And the conclusion was your true self is the one that's observing this inner voice in your head. You are not your inner voice. You're the one that's aware of this voice. So learning that the self is not the self that's in your head. It's that you have the power to change those thoughts and unlearn those conditioned things. That's your true self. And that's like the shadow self that we're talking about. So I thought that was really interesting.
I like that. And you said that was a book?
Yeah, it's called The Untethered Soul. I think it's Michael A. Singer is the author. I saw it my yoga studio has like a free like library section sort of thing where you can like take out a book. Like it's just donation based, like whoever brings in books. And that was like just one that randomly stood out to me. I don't even know why it stood out because it's like such a very muted cover. Like it's not an exciting
random though.
Yeah, it was such like a not exciting book like on the outside, and you wouldn't think that it would pop out to someone, but that's just like the one that I went to, and it's like it comes to you when you need it. So like that was like something.
A message.
Yeah, it was a message. So it's like that was a time like when I first picked up the book. I think it was like about a month ago I read it, where it was a time where I started reverting back to old patterns and like getting really in my head and just being really down on myself. And then I read that book and I'm like, okay, this voice inside my head that's beating myself up is not my true self. Like, let me step out of this and observe myself from the outside in, like you said. So sometimes you just need that reminder. Like,
I like that, the observer. Yeah, because that little negative voice, and I know I've talked about this before, like that, the critic, like your self-critic, like she's a jerk. Like,
that's not your true self. Yeah.
And I can get stuck in there and stuck in that, especially if I'm around a lot of negative people or a lot of negativity.
Yeah.
It's like I have to like crawl my way out, or be conscious enough to be like, hey, this is really negative, or I don't want to wake up to negative news or negative like things, or go to bed like with like looking at negative things and then going to
Yeah,
bed, yeah, I think that this topic is so interesting. I hope we can
I know.
find some subconscious mind experts.
I know.
So I guess the last little bit that I have here, which is setting you guys up for success. You know, we always love to ask questions, ask ourselves questions, ask our audience questions. We ask the same questions to ourselves that we ask you guys.
Yeah.
Before beginning your shadow work and embracing your darkness, here are just 5 questions to ask yourself. One, we have already mentioned in previous videos, who am I? And I know this is a question that I have struggled with for a while. And going through these questions, I'm like, I keep seeing that question. This question keeps popping up for me. So like how that book
Yeah.
popped up for you, this question. And I'm like, you know, I'm like, all right, I gotta really focus. I gotta really try to dig into that. The second question is, what do I want? And what and who do I have to let go of to get the things I desire? I doubt that once you start doing the shadow work, you'll still have the same people around you. Because when I, like I said, when I first started, there was a different group of people that I was surrounding myself with, who I was finding through this work, who I've disassociated with now, because seeing their true self or them maybe mirroring things in myself that I didn't like, starting to see that in them, I was like, that's not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
Who do I have to become to receive those things? Right? So you're letting go, you're disassociating from that negativity. Who are you going to become? You know, are your values going to change? Are your beliefs going to change? What's going to change for you to be able to receive, right? Because what is it? When things stay the same, they don't change. So something's got to give. And the last question is, how do I want to show up for myself? Right? I see this a lot online where it's like, how are you going to show up for others? Well, how am I going to do that? How am I going to focus on other people if I can't focus on myself first? Or
Yeah.
how that's where like that personal power, or like giving your power away, your personal power. I see this a lot, and especially maybe it's just the industry that I'm in, or like these business coaches, or these like businessy things, I guess you can say. A lot of the stuff that I see online is giving your power away. You know, you're listening to someone who maybe hasn't done the shadow work, hasn't embraced their darkness. Maybe they're projecting their insecurities or their doubts onto you, or onto things that they think that maybe you should believe in business. You know, I love learning. And I think the more that I learn and the more that I grow within myself, I become stronger and able to see when people, like that control factor, when someone's trying to control somebody else. And maybe that's my subconscious waking up from that, you know, being, I think one of the
Yeah.
like the parenting ways where I say, like, I try to give Violet as much independence within her safety and within reason, is because I never want her to feel controlled by another person. I never want her to feel that way, especially from a parent. You know,
Mhm.
I don't talk much about my childhood and my past things. But my dad was very controlling, and I never want that. And I always rebelled. Like I always fought that, because it was just, I guess, my personality to, and it was little things like a school dance I couldn't go. And I remember one of the moms telling my dad, like, what do you mean she can't go, she's going. And so because of that mom, you know, I got to go to a school dance, like the little things that are safe things to do or fun things to do, experiences to do. I want Violet to experience as much of life as possible. I don't want her to be sheltered like I was, because that's where that fear comes from, being
Right.
sheltered and not experiencing new things. And then as an adult, I'm trying to experience new things and I'm freaking myself out or working myself up before I even do it, like something fun. You know, that's
Yeah.
not the quality of life that I want for her.
Right. I think another question to add to this too, before you start like getting into this work is like, do I have a support system? Am I ready to do this work? Because once you start diving into these things, like you said, all of these suppressed things get uncovered. And if you're not ready to deal with them, or if you don't have a support system in place that you're aware of, then this could maybe hurt before it could help. So definitely adding that to the list of questions before you start diving into this conscious shadow work could really be helpful, because like you said, we kind of uncovered our shadow work through already working with somebody through therapy. But if you start uncovering this on your own without a support, and it doesn't have to be a therapist, it could be just whatever you consider your support, but it can be a lot to deal with on your own. So yes, you have to do shadow work for yourself and by yourself, but you also have to be able to have people that lift you up and that surround you, that are going to support you while you're working through your own stuff. They can't tell you what to work on or how to do it, but they can be there for you when the hard stuff hits, when the darkness hits. So I think that's also an important part to put as well.
Yes, thank you. I forgot about that.
That's
I
okay.
know that there's in many therapy sessions I've paid for, which I'm like half or more than half of that session, I'm just hysterically crying, having a mental breakdown. You know, I'm scheduling my mental breakdowns, I guess you can say, but it, again, like breaking down is not a bad thing. Breaking down so that you can rebuild, recharge, repair, release like repressed and suppressed things. It's all this stuff. Everyone wants to make you feel like it's like not a good thing to do, or you're weird, or there's something wrong, or it's not the right way to do things, or bad. No, they can F off. Like, like this is real. It's normal. Everybody, I'm gonna should you. Everybody should and try. I try not to use those words, but I'm gonna should you. Everyone should do this work. I think the world would be in a kinder, more compassionate place if people focus on themselves instead of like mind your business when you see a mom by herself trying to enjoy a walk with her child. Like, be quiet. If you don't have something constructive to say.
If people like you said, if more people did this work or were aware of this work, it would stop. And again, we're all human. It's not going to solve world peace, but it could stop a lot of the projecting. It could stop a lot of, you know, the violence, like all of the things that the reasons why there's bad in the world really has to do with each individual. It's not necessarily, you know, the collective. We each have an individual responsibility to add to the collective. So to be able to do this work and figure out your own stuff can give you a more peaceful life and more, you know, fulfilling, and show that to others that it is possible to have this life if you are willing to put in the work to do it. But I also wanted to make the point where like you have to let yourself feel those things. Like I just talked about that on my last live too. It's like I, in the moment, was trying to stop myself from thinking negative thoughts and from getting upset about something. But then I was like, I should just let myself feel these things, like let myself cry, let myself be hurt about these things, even though I'm aware that they're untrue. let me just get it out first, and then I can think about how to reflect about it after. Because if you're not releasing and letting yourself feel these darker emotions and, embracing your darkness, then that's when it becomes repressed and you hold on to this stagnant energy. And that's when, you project, and that's when these negative qualities come out, when you don't embrace your darkness. So I feel like that really ties up the whole series here that we focused on. Did you have anything else that you wanted to?
Two things.
Yeah.
With what you just said, I don't even know if it's a quote or just like a saying that I've heard. The only way to heal is to feel. So that's
Like that.
And then the last thing that I wanted to say is, I know that when we ask you guys questions, we love when you share your answers with us, but for these particular questions, because these questions are for me, myself, and I, when I'm doing this work, I prefer to keep my answers private when I'm doing shadow work, because this work is done by you and only for you. So don't feel the need to share your darkness with people if you don't want to. If you want to share it, great.
Right.
But don't feel that pressure that you need to share everything. That's one of the things that my best friend taught me, because going to therapy in the beginning, not knowing how to speak up or not knowing how to say stuff, and then all of a sudden I'm just like sharing everything. And she always says, you don't need to give people an explanation, you don't need to tell people everything, and I'm like, oh. So I'll leave you with that.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, all great tips. And I think, again, embracing your darkness can only bring out the good in you. So don't be afraid of, the bad, the uncomfortable, the uncertainty. That's all necessary to be able to sort of grow and learn from those things. So thank you, as always, for tuning in to our 3-part series of Embracing Darkness, and we'll see you next time.